Hey everybody, Alan Brocken, and I'm here today to talk to you about some stuff that's top of mind. Uh, First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the AI's impact on the storyteller. So you want to learn a little bit about what I think, working around AI, working around storytelling. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to get into a little bit about really kind of a question answer. I'm hoping to maybe have some commentary from you viewers out there. How's the email outreach going? Right? Whether you're a receiver of it, you're getting a lot of it, or maybe you're somebody sending it. I'd like to have a little conversation about that. And then finally, we're going to close out today with some fun with QuickBooks, and I only bring that up because I'm a small business owner, have this side business that I kind of run, and QuickBooks has always been this mysterious thing to me, and like I kind of avoided it for a long time, and then after a bit, it was like, oh, this is really cool. And then it's like, oh, this is not really cool. So anyway, we're talking a little bit about QuickBooks and the fun that makes for small business owners. So anyway, and just in case you don't know, I am a storyteller. I'm author of a number of books, but also professionally, I get on stage, tell stories, tell jokes, that kind of thing. And I basically trying out something. I was told that if you go live every day for a year, that you would like you build a skill, you build possibly an audience, you learn some things about yourself. So I'm gonna try really hard, at least every weekday. Maybe I'll get the weekends in too, but as long as I'm not on an actual vacation for the next year, I'm gonna be um just trying this live thing, talking about things that are top of mind. I do a lot of research, read a lot of things, work on a lot of different stuff. So I thought you might find what's on the top of my mind interesting. So here we go. So let's talk about AI's impact on the storyteller. And I think that to me is, sort of near and dear to my heart as an author, as a writer. I'm often pretty concerned about, is my, is my, are my tools, stealing my voice, so to speak. So when I think about storytelling, my voice is unique. I have some very specific things that I do, like just verbally. There's some tricks and tips and things I do that before AI was even a thing, really, like back when it was simple ML models, back when it was simple grammar checks. Word didn't like it. It didn't like, that I used AXE for axe because that's like the British way of doing it, but I just thought it looked cooler, right? And so I've got a fair number of like Britishisms in the way that I write stuff because I think it looks cool. Um, but the grammar checker didn't like that. But what I found over time, I've seen it get more and more aggressive to the point now where my grammar checker is like regularly suggesting I rewrite entire paragraphs. And on the one hand, when you look at what the grammar checker is giving me as a storyteller, I look at it, I'm like, huh, yeah, that probably looks more correct. I bet you it is more correct because I was never really deep into the grammar in the first place. What I found though is it starts to not be my voice. Like I have some idioms, I have some particular things that are mine, and ways I do stuff, and so it's one of those things I really like. I don't like the, I've tried to turn down some of the things that are coming from the grammar checker because I've just never mastered the comma. Like I need a comma, I need help with commas. I don't know why I can't figure out where they go, but and maybe you have issues with the comma. I don't know, but if you all have issues with the comma, I know that I can use a grammar checker. You can use one too. I don't consider that to be, some kind of unethical use of AI. And there's a lot of people have lots of opinions about AI and writing and how things get done. So, but I'll just say from my perspective, I really don't want it to take my voice. Right. I often get this picture in my head of like Ursula in the Little Mermaid movie back in the day, where she goes and takes her voice, and now she can't sing. I'm really worried about that as a storyteller. That I just am so influenced by what it's telling me. All of a sudden, I take it for granted, and I find that more often than not now on my phone in like emails and texts, where it's suddenly telling me what I should respond with, right? I don't know if you're having that issue, but with me, like I've picked up words that I've never used before. So an example on this was no worries. Like I don't know where no worries comes from. Like the only no worries I remember is back in the day, no worries, Hakuna Matata, something like that. Um, and that's just not something in my vocabulary. But the chat software I've got at work just kept telling me to put in no worries as a response to someone, to the point now I actually say it out loud. So I know that this kind of constant being suggested words, being thrown stuff is impacting my brain in a, not necessarily a negative way, but just different. Like my voice is being impacted. And that's why, like, I wanted to bring this up too, because I'm really curious what you think about, um, like in business, storytelling is a key thing, right? Like if you're in sales at all, you're telling stories to your customers. If you're in marketing, that's like the whole job is storytelling. I mean, it's all storytelling with a purpose, like you're trying to get to an outcome, but it doesn't change the fact that it's changing. And I see a ton of stuff where various companies are now like injecting AI, defaulting to AI. I was working with one of my vendors this week, and it was like, here, click here, and we'll take care of everything for you. Because apparently the AI was going to do all the storytelling for me in my marketing, in my small business. And so as I went down that road, um, what I found really interesting was this button that I clicked yesterday took away a whole bunch of options. Like 2 weeks ago, when I was in the same tool, there are all these options and things I could configure, and sort of there was some how do I want to put it, like you would put in your description and then it would rewrite your description 5 different ways, and you could figure it out. Well, now some of those options just kind of disappeared, and it looks like it's going to go ahead and retell my story for me. And what I found really interesting was, as I started to use that tool as a marketer more, I found that like its interpretation of the messages was really off. And it was one of those things I really don't want it to be doing some automatic stuff, because it's not really telling the story I want to tell. And this is kind of a silly example, but the reason I kind of picked AI's impact on the storyteller is because I have a really specific example about that. So in the products that I sell in my side business, I have this thing called a wildlife storyteller. And it's a cute little stuffed animal, and it's got a little audiobook player, and it plays the story, and it reads you the story. It's very cute. Children love their little wildlife storyteller. So I put the tagline in there that said this is a wildlife storyteller, um, in the actual description of the thing. And then as it built out the content, it started to act as if there was a human storyteller telling stories about the product, right? Because it didn't understand the context with which I put storyteller in there. Wildlife storyteller is a brand. That brand refers to a stuffed animal, but AI's ability to interpret that, to tell the marketing story, was pretty limited and didn't understand the context. And so, if I had been lazy about it, I might not have caught that that was an issue. Like as I looked through this, I was like, wait a second, this is, the first glance at the different things it was building, I was like, that's okay, maybe. And as I went down the list, it got worse and worse and worse. So I had to go back and kind of wipe out a bunch of the choices that it gave me, and then go back and like I was able to salvage two of them by completely rewriting like half of the text. And I think that's really the challenge as a storyteller, is it can actually be more work and take more discipline to go ahead and set this up so that you can work through it, right, and go back through and line by line and get really, nitpicky and parsing, than you just telling the story you wanted up front first, and saying just do that, right? Like I've come up with a story, I understand how I want to market this, I understand the words I want to use, and I've done that intentionally. So yes, AI, you might be able to give me 15 variations, and we can go test those 15 variations against the market to see what they like the best. But maybe my words were better to begin with, because I understand the context of the story. Like I understand what I'm trying to put to my customer. And so what concerns me about that then on the impact side is, what happens if we all start to get just pretty lazy? We start letting the AI tell the whole story, like every time, or we stop double checking and we let it get sloppy. I can see, as a marketer, I can see that being problematic, in that I could draw a lot of wrong conclusions about the efficacy of my marketing campaign and my overall marketing if I'm not actually double checking those things and going, oh, it used this, phrase a little incorrectly, and I can see where that would cause confusion and keep people from using it. Like doing that kind of analysis after you spent a few $100s in ads is probably a bad thing, right? So I think that's one thing I'm concerned about for the storytelling is just like getting so complacent about it, right? Like, oh, it's easy. I put in a couple of keywords and boom, there are 15 different variations. They're probably good enough. Let's go see what the market has to say about it. I think that's one side of it is just, it's kind of lazy. It was quick. It got the job done. On the flip side, I'm seeing some people do some pretty incredible stuff. I know of a couple of creators that are like very high end. I see them come on my feed all the time. They're generating 100 YouTube thumbnails for every video and doing paid ad testing against those 100 videos to figure out which thumbnail is the most clickable before they lock that in as the thumbnail they're using for their video ongoing. I just find that incredible. So, but there's no way that that's not using AI heavily to build out simply because of the time it would take, right? Like the sheer calendar time of having people come up with and craft 100 different thumbnails is just huge. So obviously there's got to be some AI or some other thing in it. And so I think that's the interesting thing. Alex Hormozy tells this story about there was this class where they told people you can only make one vase and you have to spend through the whole semester, and that's the one you turn in at the end. You get to make one, and you make the perfect one you turn it in, or you can make as many as you want all semester and throw them all away and just turn in one of them at the end. And he talks about how the people that actually made 1,000 different vases before the end of the semester and turned it in tended to have much better vases than the ones at the end that just did one. And so it's this weird thing of volume, trying something over and over and over and over again to get to the right thing versus, oh, I'm just going to work really hard on one thing and try that, right? I get the balancing act there, but there's got to be a middle ground in that where you've got to use some common sense and some thought, because I feel like when we think about the storytelling that is marketing, you need to understand what it is you're doing, right? Like at the end of the day, as you go to tweak your product, as you go to tweak your offers, understanding very explicitly why something resonated is often as much about the practice that you put into actually generating that offer, generating the words that go out there. So anyway, long and the short of this is, I think as storytellers, whether you're in sales, marketing, whether you just like to sit around the fire and tell stories, thinking a little, being conscious about how AI is impacting your storyteller, I think is just it's an important thing, and it's something to be thinking about. And I'm sure it's something I'm going to come back to in future episodes. Um, but along those lines, then the next bit that comes straight to mind is this email outreach. I don't know about you all, but I just feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of email I'm getting. And it's not like I've always gotten a lot of email. I mean, I don't know. I've never been very what do I call it? Like if there's a checkbox on the screen that you've got to uncheck to not get the email from a company, I probably didn't do the work to uncheck it. I mentioned earlier I tend to take an easy route sometimes. So I've got, all of these things I'm getting email from. But the sheer volume of what's hitting my inbox every day, it used to be in my day job email, I would get, I don't know, I'd come in the morning and I'd have a dozen total emails from, last night to the morning. Now I have at least a dozen just spams and that aren't even caught by this. Like, that's the worst part. There's a bunch of stuff in the spam that I don't even know about, like what that is, but like a dozen things that look like legitimate emails coming in. And so as I'm looking at that, I'm like, man, it's just delete, delete, delete. On my phone, I've got kind of this focused inbox thing that takes most of that stuff and puts it off to the side and I don't see it. But then as I look at it, then on my small business side, it's like, hey, what has happened? Because I had a mailing list that I was getting close to 70% open rate for the longest time, probably 2.5 years. I was getting 70% open rate, and now it's down to 27%. So I gotta assume that a big chunk of that is just everybody's so inundated they don't even see it. Because I don't know that the content that I'm putting out has changed that much. But I'm really curious about you out there. Are you having issues with your email outreach? Like, are you getting much lower hit rates? Are you getting much less communication? Has that pipe sort of filled up to the point that it's not useful? I'm just really curious. What's going on? What challenges you might be having with email outreach, but also storytelling wise. Are you having to change your story? I've got a new salesperson at my small business, and we've been doing a lot of work on like email messaging. How do we make something compelling? How do we make something tight? And so I'd just be curious, how's it going? Let me know in the comments. And then finally, I'm gonna end today on fun with QuickBooks. Now, I got to be honest, I've been running my small business since 2017. And so in that whole time until late 2024, everything had been done in Excel. I had an Excel spreadsheet that I would periodically download some stuff from my bank, and I would do a little bit of moving things around, and I was good. But then in the fall of last year, things just kind of exploded. We had tons of products. I had multiple revenue incomes. I had all this stuff going on. And everybody I talked to that had sort of a bookkeeping background, an accounting background, whatever, they were using QuickBooks. QuickBooks was the only brand in the game. And I looked around, and one of the things I was looking for was there a piece of software that integrated with both of my selling platforms at the time. Like that was the tricky part. So as I was thinking about it, it was one of these things where, okay, this seems to be the more expensive option. There were some smaller ones, but I couldn't find one that hit both of my big selling platforms. So I finally broke down and I got QuickBooks. And once I got it connected, I connected the PayPal and the selling platforms and got everything in there. At first, I was like, "Ooh, this is really cool." And then it came up with uncategorized transaction, and then all these accounts, and suddenly my mind was blown with the sheer volume of stuff I was now having to go put into very specific little buckets in QuickBooks. So I don't know if you've been through this exercise of having like maybe not a super mature business, but a business you've been running for a long time, and suddenly put it on QuickBooks. But let me tell you, that was quite the experience to kind of go through and do that. And then I hired a bookkeeper, and I thought, aha, yes, my QuickBook problems are done. No, in fact, they weren't done, because now, while I did have somebody else doing a bunch of work for me, in the end, most of the categorization stuff that couldn't be taken care of by the automation, I still had to go through and help categorize things. So that was all well and good, but then I wanted to make a budget. And as it turns out, one of the things I found out about QuickBooks that I didn't know is most people say don't use it for inventory. I don't know why exactly, but that was sort of the advice. You want to do your inventory somewhere else. So getting to the proper cost of goods sold without keeping your inventory in there too is just really ugly. So I don't recommend it. Like I think if you're going to go down the road, if you're a new business and you've been doing everything in Excel and you're thinking about getting into something else, I would say like QuickBooks is probably what your accountant's going to want to work with, or your bookkeepers. But just be ready that it's going to be a fun ride, because I have just it's been exhausting, and especially getting to a budget, because what I've been trying to do is get to, okay, here's my actual cash flow in and out, and get that all managed in there. But because of this inventory reconciliation issue, it's just not working out the way I wanted. So anyway, that's kind of what's been top of mind, just thinking about storytelling, outreach, stuff like that. And if any of this resonated with you, cool, let me know in the comments. I'll get back to it later. And see y'all tomorrow.